Okay, Sam here from Fundex Only, recording this EDH deck tech about one of my favourite decks to play, probably one of my least favourites for my opponents, is Mizzix of the Izmagnus. She is a 4 mana 2/2, so she's 2 blue-red for a legendary goblin wizard. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell with CMC greater than the number of experience counters I have, I get an experience counter. Instants and sorcery spells I cast cost 1 less to cast for each experience counter I have. So that's 1 generic less. So just a couple of quick synergies to go over. X spells. X spells are fantastic in Mizzix, because generally they're almost always going to cost, well, they are always going to cost more than the number of experience counters, unless you unless you choose X to be really low for some reason. Examples of these X spells are where are you? Blue Sun Zenith. This is one of the less good examples because it's 3 blue to cast, but you will still draw quite a fair amount off it. Finale Revelation, you definitely want to cast this for X equals 10, so hold on to that one. Stroke of Genius, you'll draw cards you'll draw cards equal to your experience counters minus 2 generic, unless you pump extra mana into it, but it will still give you an experience counter. Repeal, bounce something, like get experience counters. Where is it? Fanning the Flames works, and so does Electro Dominance. All really good with Mizzix. So, first off, I should talk about what the main focus of this deck is. It is taking turns, so this is why your opponents are not going to enjoy playing against it. So you have 6 extra turn spells, 2 of which exile themselves, so you've got to be careful on that. And those would be Karn's Temporal Sundering and Temporal Mastery. Where are you? Come here. Temporal Mastery. The other 2 of them go to Graveyard, and the other 2 go to your libraries. Generally, you'll be casting these around 10 turns 3 or 4, depending on how quickly you get Mizzix out, maybe even turn 5. But once you've got Mizzix out, you will generally use one of these, like even as an extra draw. It's pretty handy to just have an extra untap and draw. Very good. You will also use them to set up some of your bigger, more mana-intensive spells, which are your permanents. So something like Sphinx Burn Wand, Metallurgic Summonings, Cast Through Time, Swarm Intelligence, and 1,000 Year Storm. You will, it's best to take an extra turn, or maybe 2 extra turns, cast that on your extra turn, and then try and get some value out of it. Or if you've taken 2 extra turns in a row, then you can cast it on a middle turn, and then on your second extra turn you can actually make really good use out of them. So what else do we do apart from taking turns? We copy the taking turn spells. So you got Cast Through Time. So when you cast the spells, your extra turn spells, instead of going to exile or graveyard or whatever, they just become exiled, and then you cast them in your next upkeep. Very nice. You've also got Fork, Reverberate, and Wild Ricochet. I like to tilt people and call it Wild Richotchit, but that's just me. So with these spells, you just cast an extra turn spell and copy it, and then you got 2 extra turns. Nice. Norset's Reversal works in the same way, because you get a copy of the spell and then you bounce it back to your hand anyway. And then Swarm Intelligence and 1,000 Year Storm work similarly. 1,000 Year Storm's obviously a lot more impactful, but you need to have cast something before the big spell that you want to copy. Swarm Intelligence, you can just cast an extra turn spell and then you'll get 2 extra turns. Boom. So yeah, that's copying spells for you. So how do we get to those spells? Well, first off, we have to protect our commander, because if she's not on the field, then you lose a lot of value. So you've got things like Supreme Will, which most of the time cost 1 blue, very handy. Counterspell wise, got Supreme Will, Mystic Confluence, and Fuel for the Cause. Commit also works in a similar fashion as a counterspell, and also as a draw spell, which I'll go over that in a minute. We don't want too many counterspells. I don't want to have the deck be oppressive. I want people to be able to, like, if they interact with Mizzix or counter my spells, then sure, they can ruin me for a bit. I'm absolutely fine with that, because I'm being oppressive with my extra turn spells, so if they want to oppress me, then that is absolutely fine. Another thing to mention in those counter spells was Fuel for the Cause. It has Proliferate on it. You can proliferate your experience counters, which is very handy to have in the early game especially, allowing you to cheat out your big spells a lot faster. So you've got Proliferate on Fuel for the Cause, Contentious Plan, which is mostly in it for the Proliferate. The draw card is secondary. And Steady Progress, which is a bit better than Contentious Plan, because it's an instant, and it also has 3 CMC, which is great for Mizzix. So, moving on, as well as the counter spells, we have Removal. You don't have a lot of removal, but what you do have is pretty cool. Scatter from Existence can be free if you've got enough experience counters. Otherwise, it's generally quite cheap as long as you've got Mizzix out on the field. And it can get rid of enchantments, which is something that red and blue generally have a bit of difficulty with. Also gets found indestructible, which is quite a nice little thing to have. So we've got Repeal as well. Once again, it's an X spell, bounces something, draws you a card. A lot of value in this one card. Depth of Desire. Now, you bounce a creature and you create a treasure. That sounds a bit naff, but if you've got 2 experience counters with Mizzix, then you bounce a creature and the treasure token makes the spell mana neutral, which is generally very handy. And if you've got a copy, if you've got, say, Swarm Intelligence out, then you actually mana positive on it. And then here's the big boy, Cyclonic Rift. Don't really need to say much about Cyclonic Rift, it's just great. Okay, on to how do we actually draw into these spells. Well, we use draw spells, funnily enough. So you've got a couple of categories on this. You've got kind of one shot, draw 1 or 2 cards, so something like Chemist's Insight, Contentious Plan, Diggle Through Tiggle, Drawn from Dreams. Like, they're like your kind of Gush. These like your one shot kind of, I need to cycle something out of my hand. Tolarian Winds works in the same way. Just cycle in your hand, get something else out. Then you've got your big one shots, so your Blue Suns, your Stroke of Genius, and your Finale of Revelation. Generally, only if you only want to cast Finale if you can get X to equal 10. But yeah, and then you have the wheel ones. So you got Echo of Aeons. Finale kind of counts, but only for yourself. Game Plan. Where else? Time Reversal. Time Spiral. Windfall kind of counts, except you don't shuffle your graveyard back in, they're just discarded. And also the memory part of Commit to Memory. The wheel spells refill your hand completely, and also potentially shuffle your extra turn spells that got countered back into your deck. Very handy, refills your thing. Also, you've got one part of your hidden win cons, your random win cons I should say, is a Narset. You make all your opponents have only 1 card in hand, if you chain them together, then they only have one, even better. So those are your draw spell options. You can end up spinning your wheels quite a bit, but one end, like, you are building up to something at when you're spinning your wheels, and that is finding a random win con. So you got metallurgic summonings is really handy for when you're spinning your wheels, because if you go wheel, take an extra turn, then you've probably created between, well, just from that example, you created 3 potential 6/6s, maybe a 5/5 in there, and then you've got an extra turn that they can attack in. And then in that extra turn, you can also create more by casting more draw spells and more extra turn spells. And then you can, like, once you've run out of steam, you can pay 5, bounce them, and then return all of your instant and sorceries from your graveyard to your hand, which is just redonkulous. Allows you to go off again and use one of your other random win cons. One of them is expansion. Oh, I can't even talk. Expansion explosion. It's random in the way that, you know, it might not even. It probably should be in the draw section or the damage section, but I just couldn't, because it does so many things. Or because it can also go into the copy section. I just put it into this one because it's an all-star. Yeah, you can kill something, you can draw stuff. You use it how you see fit. And we have insurrection. If you're in a game that has a lot of has a ground out board state where people just have loads of creatures and no one wants to make an attack, and people are scared of your Cyclonic Rift or your massive metallurgic summoning constructs, then you can insurrection and just wipe quite a few people out, the most dangerous people out, if not everyone. Funny card, people don't expect it. Now this is sorry, this is in Japanese, but I basically it's just Ral Storm Conduit. Whenever you cast or copy a spell, you deal 1 damage to any target. It's a random win con because you can cast a spell, cast Reverberate, and then cast Expansion onto the Reverberate, which then can copy the expansion, and then you just go off like that. It's that's just a win right there. That goes infinite. Otherwise, it provides a bit of value. You can copy there's -2 copies the next spell you cast, so you can use it before you cast an extra turn spell, which protects the extra turn spell from a counter spell because you got another copy of it on the stack. Good card. Scroll of the Masters, sneaky win con, can come up quite a bit. You can also make it so that's yeah. So I'll just go through the card. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you put a lore counter onto the scroll, and target creature you control gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each lore counter on it. Once you've been spinning your wheels for a bit with this on the field, you can easily get up to 20 lore counters. In which case, if you Cyclonic Rift, you can attack with your Mizzix for lethal commander damage, which is funny. It is funny. I think it's funny. Your opponents won't. Okay, Sphinx Burn Wand. Once again, it's to make spinning your wheels a lot better. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you can put a charge counter on it. If you do, it deals damage equal to the number of charge counters to target creature or player, which might be any target now, I'm not sure. But anyway, if you're spinning your wheels, just like, oh, I'll cast a wheel, take an extra turn, draw a card, draw another card, cast a wheel, blah blah blah, then you can really start like pinging and like chunking people's health totals out. If you're like, once it's down, you're probably gonna win, as long as you've got enough wheels and extra turns in your hand. Okay, so those are your random win cons. How do we get to these? Sometimes we need mana. So we've got brass. Well, going over the basics. Soul Ring is its signet. You don't want too many mana rocks in this because you want all the instants and sorceries. You could run stuff like Mana Crypt and that if you wanted to get, like, make absolutely sure that you get Mizzix out on turn 2. That's up to you. I'm fine with it. I'm fine with it like this. Izzet Signet is just a decent rock. Colour fixes, very handy. Mana Geyser, big mana. Like especially early because people tend to tap out quite a bit early on in order to not be out-tempered by everyone else. So you can generally add about 6, 7 to your pool, and then that can lead you to an early Swarm Intelligence or 1,000 Year Storm quite easily. Brass's Bounty, late game, 1 red, get 1 extra like land essentially because of the amount of treasure tokens you get, and you can copy Brass's Bounty and get a lot of extra mana. Treasures are great because especially from when an innocent makes them, or sorcery, because they fix your colours, which then means that you can chain more sorceries into them, instants and sorceries afterwards. And then, what happens when your spells get countered? Well, they go to your graveyard, don't they? Or if they resolve, sometimes they go to you, well, most of the time they go to your graveyard. So we've got Spell Recursion. It's not a big category, but it's a powerful one. Spell Twine. Oh, I think I'll cast my Walk the Aeons from my graveyard, and your other good spell, even if it's Path to Exile, it's still handy from yours. So I'll take next turn for 1 blue potentially, and then Past and Flames. Yeah, you don't want to overdo it with what you cast and with the Past and Flames because you don't want all your graveyard exiled because you've got other effects, so use it sparingly. Mystic Retrieval brings it back to your hand, very nice, has flashback, generally costs 1 blue and 1 red to cast, so it's fantastic. Mizzix's Mastery, when you just need to have an incredibly explosive turn, you go 3 red and potentially take a bunch of turns, draw a bunch of cards, loads of stuff. Finale Promise, you've got the potential when you cast it to cast Nexus of Fate and one of the other extra turn sorceries, or potentially just use a wheel. Very, very handy card, very mana efficient as well because it's 2 red plus X, which is generally covered by your experience counters to cast a huge amount of value. Some tutor cards. Mystical Tutor is not amazing because you don't have too many like one-shot card draw, but it's still handy to do if you if it's in someone's end step and you want before it comes back to your turn. Merchant Scroll's a bit handier. You can just bring an extra turn spell to your hand if you want, or a counter spell if you want to protect your extra turn spell. Very handy. So Invert and Invent. You don't tend to cast Invert that much, but it can come up. But Invent, blue-red to search your library for an instant and sorcery card. That gives you exactly what you need when you need it. Very good. Oh, I forgot to mention Mystical Tutor synergizes very well with God Eternal Kefnet. That does need to be mentioned. And lastly, last category, damage. These are just Explosion can go into this here as well. When you just need to deal damage to someone or something, you use these spells. Electro Dominance allows you to cheat in another spell, maybe an extra turn spell if you want. Fanning the Flames has buyback 3, so you can just continuously cast it for red. X equals your experience counter is -3, and then you buy it back, and then you get an experience counter because it costs more than the number of experience counters you had, blah blah blah. And you just burn people out. It's a slow win con, but you can use it to take out troublesome creatures as well. Very handy. So that is the deck. Some changes that you can make if you want. You can take out some of the cute little interactions like the proliferates. Probably Contentious Plan, Chemist's Insight. You could probably take out Gush if you wanted. You replace them with Force of Will, Force of Negation, maybe Daze if you really wanted to protect yourself. Counterflux, you might want to put in something like Storm's Wrath, some more bounce spells, maybe Blasphemous Act. You don't want to kill Mizzix too much, but you want to be able to stay safe. So there's what you do if your meta is very aggressive. You might also want to put in Mob Rule if it's very aggressive, because you might be able to kill someone who's overextended a bit. It's another form of insurrection. Things you might want to take out: Sphinxburn Wand, Scroll of the Masters. These are my cute cards. These are kind of funny. Don't need to keep them in. More counter spells would make the deck really impressive, especially if you kept the extra turn spells in there. So that's on you if you want to be that guy. I don't judge you. I want to be that guy as well, but I don't have enough of those cards. So I just make people sad in my own way. Okay, this was Sam, Fun Decks Only. I hope you enjoyed this deck tech. I might be able to get some footage of it at some point, because the Affinity for Commander peeps might be filming at the Geek Retreat again soon. So I might pull this out, but it might be a bit too much for them to narrate. I could understand that, because it'd be a bit boring just to have one person take all of the turns forever. But I'll see how they feel about me playing this one. Okay, well that is my Mizzix deck tech, and I will see you later. Bye.